Okay, and welcome back to our next video lesson. Uh, like what I've done with the previous, it'll be broken up hopefully into videos that are no more than about 10 minutes at a time. And there will be a few parts where I'll probably say, okay, pause now and do some work. In fact, that's actually exactly what we're going to start with today. So I'll just give you a small layout and then I'm going to tell you to go off and build this network. Okay, so you can see on my screen, I've got Packet Tracer open with a brand new page, and I have pulled out four computers and two switches, and I've configured up as being shown. So on the left-hand side, I've got two computers called IT1 and IT2, and they're plugged into something called the IT switch. Okay, the IP addresses are listed over here. It's 192.168.20. 22 and 25, both on a /24 network. And on the right hand side, I've got something called AC1 and AC2 with something called the AC switch. Now, I'm not talking about air conditioning here, I'm talking about accounting. So pretend that we have like an IT department and an accounting department. The IT department has a bunch of computers, and the accounting department also has a bunch of computers. The accounting computers are on a completely different network, 192.168.30. And maybe the reason why we've separated is for a couple of reasons. Maybe accounting people have some private information that they don't necessarily want people in IT to see, and vice versa. Maybe there's things going on in IT that you don't want to see traffic over on the other side in the accounting department. Okay, so what I'm going to do is right away I'm going to stop this video and I want you to take a few minutes and actually do this. So I'm just going to say pause video and construct the network above and make sure that you can ping between the computers that should work. Okay, of course, what I mean by that is please make sure that the IT computers can ping each other and make sure that the accounting computers can ping each other. Okay, so I'll leave this page here for a couple of minutes. Well, actually, I'll leave it for a few seconds, but I'll give you enough time now. I'd suggest you pause and just take the 5 minutes or so to get everything set up and make sure everything is working correctly as we expect. Okay, so hopefully this is an easy exercise because we've done this just like before. Okay, now cancel. Let's minimize this. I will need that for next time. So here we go. So of course you won't be able to ping from 192.168.20.22 all the way over to say 192.168.30.22 because, well, of course they're on two completely different networks. Now what we did do last time is we did learn how we could run a network connection from the IT switch to the accounting switch, and we could change our subnet mask to be a /16 or 255.255.0.0, and that would allow everything to communicate again. But I want to do this one quite a bit different this time. Okay, now here's the reason why. We do know that every time that an initial packet goes out from one computer to another computer, there's this big broadcast called an ARP asking the question, who's got this particular IP address? And anytime that IT starts to talk to a new computer over here, we really don't want this traffic bugging all the other computers over on this side. Now you may say, well, there's only a couple of computers. What kind of problems are we talking about? Well, imagine the actual real internet. This could easily be a computer at one end of the planet, and this could be a computer in a completely different place on the planet, and you certainly don't want to see these ARP messages just going across absolutely everywhere, because every time a computer wanted to start a communication with somebody new, this ARP broadcast would go to absolutely everybody, and really there's no reason for actually doing this. So I'm going to use a completely different approach to solving this problem. Okay, and the secret here is to use what's known as inter-network routing. Okay, so you can see on the left-hand side, I've got this network called 192.168.20, and on the right-hand side, I've got a completely different network called 192.168.30. Okay, and what we need is we just need to put something in the middle that can deal with both both of these networks, but obviously it's not a switch because switches work at a slightly different layer where you're only worrying about MAC addresses. We need something that works at layer 3, and that device is called a router. And what a router is simply a computer that has two completely independent network cards. And that's a little bit different than a switch because if you take a look at the physical view of the switch, let me make this one big again. Uh, we know that there's a lot of places where you can plug computers in, but really these particular ports here, in fact all of the ports, are really working together. So a broadcast message in the one shows up to absolutely everybody else. And that's not the type of thing that we need to solve our current problem. But instead, you'll see that there's a section down here called routers, and there's a whole bunch of these other things. Now, it's a slightly different symbol, and I'm going to start with a very simple one today called the Cisco 1841. It's one of the easiest routers to work with because it's quite simple to it's got fairly limited features. Okay, but it's good enough for us to get us started. Okay, so I'm going to drop this thing called a router into the middle, and I'm going to show you what its picture looks like. So let's open this up full and zoom in. Okay, and what we see here, this is a little bit more interesting because there's a lot of different spots. Now, the things that I'm really interested in are the two things that are marked here in yellow. Okay, so these ones right here, one above, one below. And unfortunately, you can't really see because I just can't zoom in any closer. One of these is going to be marked as FE00. The other can be marked as FE10, I think is what it looks like. Okay, and what these are the two interfaces. We're going to ignore this thing called a console and this other thing called the auxiliary input. We're not interested in this for this course at all. The power switch, by the way, for this router is over here. We don't need this yet, but eventually we might want to. And you'll see that there's actually other places where you can get more complicated things, but we're not going to be dealing with these at the moment. But this is the important thing. There are two network ports, and they are not set up at all like what they are done with a switch. In this case, these two particular network ports are completely independent of each other. Now, that's going to cause some problems in terms of configuration because it's going to be a little bit more to get it configured, but it allows two networks to be plugged in at exactly the same time. And the router is actually smart enough to figure out when messages come to it for the other network, it will send the packet across to the network it needs to go to. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. The first thing I need to do is I need to plug in this router into both networks. Now, the solution to this is very simple. We'll go over here, we'll grab a piece of wire, and we'll pick one of the ports. Okay, again, it doesn't matter in this course which one of these ports we actually pick. So I could pick anything at all. You know what, I'm going to go down, I'm going to use this thing called the Gigabit Ethernet 01 again, but it'll work with any of these ports. And I'm going to come over here, and you see now I have two places where I can plug this in. Now, we have to remember where we've actually plugged this in, and I will show you how to get this back if you forget. But the left-hand side I'm going to plug into 00, and the right-hand side I'm going to plug into the other. Now, if you accidentally make a mistake, it is possible to continue, but it does mean that the configuration is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to put a value in here, and I'm going to plug something from here. Okay, so from this switch, I'll take this one, and I'll plug it into this side. Now, immediately when you see the red dot, you go, oh, I've made a mistake. Maybe I got the wrong type of cable. No, actually, when you're dealing with routers, the interfaces are not, it's not set up immediately when you drag the router out, unlike a switch. Okay, but we need to do a few things first. So here's the first thing I'm going to do. Now, if you forgot which network connection you plug this in, because I can't even remember right now, so you know something is over here. This is really the IT network, which all starts with 192.168.20 dot something. If I can't remember, all that I do is I just hover over top for a second, and you can see it's filled out that this is FA00. Okay, so remember that as we pop this open, FA00. Now, for this particular exercise, we're going to be using this thing here called config. Now, the configuration has got a bunch of places where I can put things. And you'll see the place that I'm really interested right now is down the left-hand side. There's something called interface. Okay, and there are two interfaces because, well, guess what? There's two places where you can plug things in. One is called Fast Ethernet 00, which is the one on the left, and the other is 01. Well, let's start off with 00. Now, a couple things over here. There's a few things that need to be set before we can actually make use of it. The first thing is the IP address. Now, this is the IP address of this computer. So really, this router is kind of like a computer with two network cards. So we need to pick some kind of a network address like this. It needs to start with 192.168.20 because we're plugging it into the IT side, not the accounting side. If it's the accounting side, it would start with something .30, but this one is .20. Now, I need to keep going, and I need to provide one other address. Now, I could pick a number like 8. I could pick a number like 89. I could pick a number like 123. But I'll be quite honest, most of the time, if it's just a single router, I tend to use .1, and actually a lot of other people will tend to use .1. The other popular one for routers is these big numbers like 254, but I'm going to use the .1. Okay, and just like on a computer, there is a subnet mask, and yes, this is in fact the subnet mask I'm going to be using. It's going to be a /24. Now, the only other thing you have to do in order to make this thing function is, you'll see up here there's this thing called port status, and by default on a router, this is switched off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this on. And you'll notice as soon as I turn this on, this link light now became active, and this one became the blocked state, the orange state. But just like before, what it's doing is this is simply checking to make sure that there's no loops somewhere. So after a couple minutes, this should clear up. Okay, the second thing I'm going to do is remember that this router has two interfaces, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left is the 00 and the one on the right is the 10. So since we're here, let's go ahead and configure this side. Okay, now this side, of course, is connected to the accounting network. The accounting network is using the addresses 192.168.30. Something. Okay, and just like what I did on the IT side, I'm going to use .1. Okay, again, it doesn't have to be. It could be .2, could be .15, but in order to keep it a little bit easier, I'm going to leave it as .1. And again, there will be a subnet mask, which will be the typical /24 subnet mask. And the same thing as what I did before. We're going to enable this port, and of course, we'll turn this side green. All right, good. Now, what we'll do is we'll take this away. Okay, and we'll close it up, and you can see now that the left-hand side is now turned green, the right-hand side is still orange, and what I'm going to do is, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to put a couple labels in here. Okay, so this is 192.168.20.1/24, and this side was 192.168.30.1/24. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this is just so I can refer back to these things in a few minutes as I start doing my tests. Okay, so now the good news is everything is up in green. Well, let's open up a couple of computers and start doing some ping tests. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to open up this one, and I'm going to open up this one. So that's the same thing. I've already pre-opened these ones to make sure my networks were working before. And the one on the left-hand side is the IT1. Okay, well, since we're here, let's do a quick check. Can I ping IT2? So it's 192.168.20.25. Okay, and that's a good sign. I can ping that one. Now, the real interesting thing is, okay, I'm here. Can I ping this thing over here called a router, which I said kind of acts like a computer? You'll notice, by the way, the switches don't actually have an IP address, but routers do. Okay, well, let's give it a try. Can I ping address number 1, 20.1? And yes, I actually can. Okay, so I'll let that one finish. Now, I'm going to go over here to AC1, and I'm going to do a couple pings again. Let me try 192.168.30.143. So that's the other accounting computer. That's working fine. And of course, I'm also interested in pinging 192.168.30.1 to see whether or not the router is working. Okay, good. And that's also fine. Okay, so does this mean that we've actually solved all of our problems? Well, unfortunately, not quite, but pretty close. Okay, so what we're going to do now is from the IT computer, I want to see if I can ping 192.168.30.22. 192.168.30.22, and it doesn't look like I can do it. Okay, and of course the reason why I can't do it makes a whole lot of sense. It's just like what we had before. The computer on the left-hand side knows that its address is 192.168.20.22, and because it's using a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, it knows it's on the 192.168.20 network, but it doesn't know anything about any other network or how to deal with any other network besides its own. And that's because when we configured things, we left something out. Okay, back to my IP configuration on IT1. We have covered this thing called an IP address. That's the address of the computer. We've covered the subnet mask, which tells you which parts are the network and which parts are not, but we've never put anything here called default gateway. Now, what I'm going to do with the default gateway is I'm going to go to 192.168.20.1, and here's what it means. What this is telling my computer is that if anything is destined for 192.168.20, well, I know how to deal with that. If somebody asks me to deliver a message to anything else other than this, I will give the packet to this computer, and that computer hopefully figures out where to send the message. And of course, that computer happens to be a router that knows how to cross packets from one side to the other. Now I'm going to put this away. Now, unfortunately, this is going to take a few seconds, but yes, unfortunately, I have no choice. I have to go through, and I'm going to do all of them exactly the same. So this is an IT computer, so 20.1. Let me close this one up. Let me go over to this one. Close up the command prompt, open the IP config. I will do exactly the same thing. This is number 30.1. So remember, this computer uses this router as its default gateway. So remember, default gateway simply means where do I send the packets if I have no idea where else to send it. Okay, so let's close up this one, and finally we'll fix this one as well under IP config. This one will also be 192.168.30.1. And now my configuration is complete. Now, what have we managed to do? Okay, well, let's go back to IT1 and try pinging again. Now, 192.168.30.22, okay, hopefully this ends up working a little bit better. And you'll notice now that suddenly I can reach the other end. So what's going on? Okay, so once again, we do a recap. So when this computer wants to send out a packet to 192.168.30.22, the first thing that this computer does is it looks at its IP address and it says, hey, you know what? That is not on my network, so therefore I can't just send it out directly because this poor switch will never figure out where this goes. But instead, because I've configured my wrong one. Here we go. Because I've configured my default gateway to 20.1, what this computer does is it sends the packet over to the router at 192.168.20.1 and says, hey, I've got a packet for somebody, but I don't know what to do with it. Okay, and what happens now is the router receives that packet and it says, oh, okay, I know that the packet is destined for 192.168.30, and I know where this network is, so therefore I will hand it out this way to the switch, and the switch can try delivering it. Okay, and even if I tried something that didn't exist, okay, so let's try a ping right here. If I tried 192.168.30.45, well, that doesn't exist, so I don't expect to get back any reply. But what's happening is the packets do get handed over to the router, and the router then starts to do ARP broadcasts out to this connection right here, trying to find, is there somebody out there with the address 192.168.30.45. Okay, and of course nobody responds, so that's why my pings are not actually going through. Okay, but what this is now it allows me to build up a much larger network, and more importantly, I can isolate the traffic. On the left hand side of the screen, I only get traffic for 192.168.20. On the right hand side, I only get the packets for 192.168.30.30 network, and I don't get anything else. Okay, now give me 1 second because I have to see if I ask you to do something or if I'm just going to get you to try build this. Okay, so I think I won't get you to do anything else quite yet because I've got a really big exercise in a few minutes, but I want you to try this. Okay, so construct a network above and make sure you can ping between the computers. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add the router and configure the interfaces and make sure that you can ping from one network to the other. So hint, of course, is don't forget the gateway. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this particular video as it is now. So in fact, it's not even pause video. It's like just do this. I'm not actually going to get you to submit this one, but I would encourage you to actually try it so you can get used to how things are going. So you can follow, you can go back and play back the video quite a bit slower and make sure that you can actually set up the two networks with the single router. And I'm going to be back in the next video making life, of course, a little bit more difficult so we can cover the next topic. Okay, see you in the next video.